screwed up. Now we are live.
Oh,
Now
okay.
we are live. So let me just
Yeah,
reset for
I see the
everybody.
live
We
up
were
on
we
one of
were
them.
live. We were going for a good minute here, and I didn't realize I had one more button to hit. So hello
Oh,
everybody.
okay.
Welcome to the brand new episode of The Meet with Big Pauly. I'm Big Pauly over here on the left, and over here on the right I have Rob from the great state of Virginia, and we'll talk sports with you for the next hour and a half. Rob, go ahead and say what you were going to say. You had baseball practice that you went to today?
Yeah, actually, the coach of the team that I'm sponsoring, he and I have been friends almost 50 years, and so I went up there today just pretty much just to watch, see how the team's progressing. And he said, "Why don't you go out here and work with the pitchers today?" So I took different pitchers, different catchers off, and showed them they actually can steal bases in this league. It's 70 feet bases, and 50 foot from home plate to the mound. So we got some guys who can zip the ball 60, probably 65 miles an hour, can do pretty well. 10, 11, and 12-year-olds. That's all.
Is this the league where if you win, you get to go to the World Series in Williamsport?
No, this is simply just a county league, and they do win trophies and stuff, and no participation trophies. Only if they do win. That's the only way it rolls. So that's why I like that.
Well, that's the way it should be.
Yeah, that's the way I feel too. And I've told the guys, I said, look, no pressure on you. I said, yeah, you carry my name on your back. I said, all I want is 11, 12 kids act like you got some sense. Don't go out here and do anything stupid. And some of them so new they don't know not to throw the bats. We're teaching them just the mechanics of the game. So when they get into the game, the first game, when they realize they can actually lead off base, they can get picked off, they can steal. It's going to be a kind of I don't know. I don't want to say a shock to them because I want them to be prepared. But being prepared and having mom and dad talking to you all the time, and then all of a sudden have 50, 100 people watching you, totally different thing. It's a totally different beast.
Oh, something going on there, Rob. What else were we going to talk about tonight? Well, the big story in baseball right now is Albert Pujols and his release for the Angels. And oddly enough, we were just talking about this 3 days ago. We thought that Pujols was like dead weight. He had a great career. He's probably going to the Hall of Fame. But as things stand now, nobody's going to be able to use him.
Well, 36 million, I think he was scheduled to make this year. And we're playing April, May, June, July, August, September, 6 months. So he pretty much made 6 million. 30 million is going to get paid to him now. What else could they have done? I mean, he was taking a roster spot. First base is a golden place nowadays. It is a place that if somebody's got a stump toe or black eye or just any kind of problem, stick them at first base 2 or 3 games, or in their case they could have a DH as well. But now it opens up the possibilities a lot now for the Angels.
And they might have to put Trout, he's getting older, the wear and tear on him, even though he's off to a good start offensively.
He can still run and jump, though. That's the one thing about Michael. He can carry the frame of 235, 240. He really does well because he's an athlete. I mean, he's a gazelle out there. I don't see him coming out of the outfield anytime soon because he's still a legit 40-40 threat. And what is he, 32, 31?
I think you're right.
Something like that. Right. So he's still a legit threat at being at his age, of being a 40-40 guy. As long as he's that way, they can let him roam the outfield. He can really run. And I don't see him going to first base anytime soon. This opens up a chance of Ohtani coming to play first anytime they want him to.
Would be a good spot for him. Let the record reflect that our very first chatter here is Brendan Baker, and I was posting it up. Hello, Brendan. How are you today, sir? Thank you for being the very first to chat on the meet with Big Pauly. And I did a nice little open, but I forgot to hit one last button here, and y'all missed it. I hope
but I heard it, so it was great.
Oh, it was fantastic, right?
Yeah, that's it.
My hope is we get more people who play the games in what I like to call the low-tech sports gaming community we have here with the board games and the computer games. And I mean that with all sincerity.
Yeah.
That we get more people to interview. So I wanted to take the plunge and give it a try myself here with Rob. So Brendan, thank you for joining in. Rob, I wanted to talk to you about a favorite game of mine, wrestling's finest. I know you've been talking a lot with Tom Bogle.
Yeah. Had a problem getting it loaded and downloaded everything on my computer. Let me tell you guys, if you are computer illiterate like I am, all you got to do is email Tom. Tom will go through the process A, B, C, D, E, F, G until you got it done. Stayed on the phone with us over an hour yesterday. My wife was the one running the computer at the time, talking to Tom, and he couldn't have been any nicer. And also you've said it also presents extras like something you sent me yesterday. I haven't really figured out what that is yet, but is that like more stuff coming?
What that is images you could use in the game.
Okay.
There was a gentleman, and Tom, if you see this later, my apologies for not remembering him. There was a poster on the Delphi board, and we have pictures for every wrestler and every tag team, but there were maybe about a couple of hundred so that weren't available, like say a George Kidd from England, or maybe Hiroyoshi Tenzan, who's done well in my GSW from Japan. And they didn't have pictures of all of these, and there was one gentleman who just filled in the gaps quite nicely, and we're down now to maybe a handful of pictures left.
Yeah, I saw his name, but it runs from me now exactly who it was. But I saw his name up on, and he was chatting to me and saying, yeah, this guy added a lot of stuff to it, so it should be a lot of fun. So
I very briefly had my game screen up and running, and I was sharing that. Let me just do that again. There you go.
Yeah.
And that's one of the nice little backgrounds that comes with the game. You get to see all the old arenas like the Cow Palace and so forth.
Cow Palace.
Very nice game. Very nice game. San Francisco, California. That was first at San Francisco territory, and then the AWA used it eventually in the 80s. They did an ESPN pay-per-view there. Not a pay-per-view, but there was like a primetime show that the AWA had, and they had I would say spring of 87 or 88. They had a primetime show on ESPN.
Yeah, they was at the Showboat in Vegas.
I've been to the Showboat,
and they had done Atlantic City Showboat as well. Now neither one exists.
That's true. That's true. I lived at one point in 2000, like very, very close to the Showboat, and they had a bowling alley in there also. So
you lived close to Vegas at one time?
I lived out in Vegas twice, but you got to have money to be out there. So it was a fail each time. But yeah, Vegas was an AWA town. Las Vegas does not really have a real deep wrestling history, but you would think otherwise, because wrestling was so popular in the 50s, 60s, and then again in the 80s, 90s, and up to now.
And now, if you're going to watch wrestling that's got any name to it at all, you go out to Sam's Town and Ring of Honor. They come there once or twice a year now.
I think that one time they were also using the Orleans Arena. Where the minor league hockey team is. Now they don't have a minor league hockey team because of the Golden Knights.
Right.
So, what else has been on your docket as of late?
Well, I've been playing some payoff pitch baseball from 2019. That's a lot of fun. And the thing is, if you've got, and we'll talk about this, I'm sure too, Glory Days Boxing, same card stock as Glory Days Boxing.
Oh yeah, very nice.
Yeah, that is payoff pitch baseball, and it's real cool. It's a good game. I'm still in all my replays, and I've probably replayed NPNG Plus. I've probably replayed 220 games, and this I've probably replayed maybe 100 games. So what's that? 320. Still never had a no hitter yet.
I just did perfect team for the YouTube last night. I did a little thing for Twitch. Didn't look like it worked too well earlier this one. I call it random acts of OOTP. But last night I nearly had a triple play. I had the third baseman step on the third base bag, throw the second, throw the first. Throw the first was not in time. Nearly had a triple play on my game. So you got to note these instances when they occur.
I've had 4 home runs in one game before.
Who with?
Red Sox, Xander Bogaerts, and it was against. Oh boy, who was it? Somebody at Baltimore. I think it wasn't against one pitcher because, I mean, this was a total blowout. I think he scored like 26 runs, and he knocked in 10 or 11 runs. He knocked
Mark
in.
Whitten did that once in the 90s, bringing 11. Let me say hello to Dave Gardner and Sports Time Machine for joining us. Utah
What's up, Mike?
Let me just say hello to everybody.
Mike. Captain Carl, what's going on?
Captain Carl just joining in the last few moments with his chat. So nice to have so many of you with us. This is my first little sojourn in the hot seat here, and I hope you all enjoy me doing the interviews. Joining now Red Sox fan and Rob and Bleacher Bums Anthony and Dave and a few others doing all this. And like I was saying, I'd love to see everybody do this because a rising tide lifts all boats. If you could call a game on YouTube, then you could most definitely do something like this. And I would love to see everybody interview everybody, and we could learn all about each other. My first adventure with sports games goes back to, I think it was either 86 or 87. My first game ever was Sherco Grand Slam Baseball, which was a fun game because I loved it because you could position the outfielders. You had these little pegs, and you could position the outfielders. You had to look at a chart, and the charts represented all the ballparks like Candlestick Park, Wrigley Field, Boston, and so forth. And they had a system that the ball could bounce off the green monster in Fenway. What was the first game you ever played, Rob?
Let's see. Well, I had originally a hands-on game. I had one of those Stanley Cup games where the metal rods that you actually spin and you have your
the rod hockey, yeah,
Coleco or something like that is what it was called, and you actually dropped the puck in from way up high and it fell down because you let it roll because you had to be ready. We got good at that. I mean, man, we really did well at that. I got that one Christmas, maybe probably 79 or 80. I also had electric football. I don't know if you ever had the electric football where they vibrate men. I got that in 1978. And my mom and dad promised me every year that I could get one division. And this is when it was NFC East. Was it Cardinals? Was it Cowboys? Was it Giants? Was it Redskins? And the Eagles. Remember when the Cardinals was still in the East and
in St. Louis?
Seattle was an AFC team.
AFC West.
And I ended up saving all those. I had all the teams saved up. And I met my wife in 06. I wanted to clean out all my stuff from my parents' house. And they said, look, you got all these toys and stuff. They call it toys. It was stuff that I kept in pretty good shape. It was 05? Yeah, we met in 05, but I think 05, 06 one, I ended up taking all the stuff up to Philly. And I ended up having, I was like, okay, my electric football board was starting to get a little rusty and all. And I said, you know what? Let's put some of this stuff online and just sell it. And I put the Cowboys on there and Steelers team by team by team. And I thought, well, I've got all my good money out of the way. At the end, I had the orange uniforms of Tampa. That was the last team I had, and I had 12 of them. And that went for over $100 just for the little plastic men so big. And I had numbers for them and number sets and all that. But I made probably $1,000, probably over $1,000 on all the teams because I sold them separate. I wasn't even selling divisions. I was selling separate teams. And I had no idea what I had in front of me. And I told my wife, I said, look, we ended up making a little money here, but it worked out. It worked out pretty well.
Utah Mike, Sports Time Machine, saying, I threw 2 no-nos on my Strat 72 replay same day in Major League history. Bill Hands and Tom Seaver. Well, Seaver's not a bad hand to have.
Not at all. Not at all. And last night, a no-no with the Orioles. How about that?
John Means.
Yeah.
John Means threw a no-no.
I think he's supposed to be their ace anyway, right? I would say.
Actually, I was messing around on OOTP with the Orioles, and yeah, it was either Alex Cobb, because I know him because he used to play with the Rays, or John Means. They were like 1-2, so maybe Means moves up to the top spot. I
think Means was their opening day pitcher this year. I think
might be right.
I'm not sure. Somebody out there may be able to help us out, but I think Means was their opening day pitcher. So now 3 official no hitters, and then the one. Look. Why can't you call it? I'm just saying. I'm saying 4. I'm saying 4. Bumgarner, look, getting the bum.
It's not his fault. The game went 7.
Yeah, he did all he could do. He couldn't have pitched 8 innings because they didn't go that far. So
I feel the same way when a mid-major goes undefeated, but they don't make the playoff. It's not the kid's fault that that's what the schedule gave them. Because I was familiar with Sean King because he played at Gibbs here in St. Petersburg. He went to Tulane. Tulane went undefeated, but this was before they did the playoff. They got gypped out of buying for the national championship. Always hated when that happens. If you go undefeated, you should be in the playoff.
And the thing of it is, it's eventually going to get to 8 teams. It's eventually going to get to 8 teams. Those bowl games such as the Rose Bowl, Orange Bowl, they mean nothing no more because all they are prep games for the national title games. Now it's going to be those games and then 2 semifinal games and then a national championship game probably going to be taking place 20th of January or something eventually. Not yet, but it's going to happen because anytime you mention the word NCAA and money, they stick together like glue. So you're not going to get them apart.
So you're going to have January Madness eventually.
It will eventually be. And the thing of it is, if it goes that far, all I say is, look, let each conference have 1 team.
Yes, I totally agree.
Let the Big 5 have 1 team go in automatically, whoever their champion is. All right. Then after that, if there's any other undefeated independents, put them in there.
Like Notre Dame.
Then start going by the other. Let's say Alabama goes 11-1, Auburn goes 11-0, and Auburn goes 10-1. And they've got a real strong case for themselves. Maybe they get put in there as well because with 8, it shouldn't be that big a problem. And you're not probably going to have over 1 or 2 independents that are undefeated.
Right.
But that's got to be the case with undefeated. I mean, with independents, they got to go undefeated though. They cannot have 1 loss because a lot of the Big 5 is going to have 1 or 2 that only has 1 loss, and a team like Florida would have a lot better case against a team like BYU if they've got 1 loss and Florida's got 1 loss. You know who Florida plays across the board, and it's a lot harder talent. So just use your brains. Just use your brains. And
Yeah, I'd be okay with a Big Five wild card as long as you got 2 slots available for the mid majors, or say if a Notre Dame doesn't go to the ACC permanently, wouldn't mind seeing that as a Notre Dame fan.
yeah,
But I would just leave 2 slots open for the mid majors. Between those 5 conferences that are not the majors, I think you could make the argument for 2 teams.
yeah. What's up, Mark Mo?
Mark, how are you, sir?
Mark likes it wrestling as well.
Yeah, you had a card already. You had a couple of cards already with Wrestling's Finest. You had that WrestleNet.
Yeah,
that looked like a good card. I was looking in on that.
I had 10
yesterday
matches
afternoon.
on that one, and then I had a Florida. I had a Florida show, just a regional show of an hour, and it was like 5-6 matches we ended up showing, and Ric Flair and Bob Armstrong was a really good one.
Yeah, Armstrong was in Florida for a while in the 70s, but I think he's better known for Alabama and Knoxville. I listen to Ron Fuller's podcast every week, the Studcast, and I love how his mind works for booking. And I wish you see that today in the modern day game, but it's a totally different animal now.
Well, and that's the thing, Eddie Graham too. Eddie Graham in Florida, man, oh man, he was just so ahead of his time.
He was.
But the thing is, he committed suicide, and then his son committed suicide. Mike. I mean, what 04, 05, Mike was still talking about what he could do to fix Florida wrestling if he went down there, and just I don't know. I really think that Kevin Sullivan, if you hear some of his podcasts now,
another great mind in the business.
He'll tell you that a lot. It didn't take but 4 or 5 people to really knock wrestling off its chains. Dusty Rhodes did a lot to do that, because he didn't want to pay the talent back in the NWA and WCW days, and then he ended up jumping and going to New York. Barry Windham will tell you that. Mike Rotunda will tell you that. Ric Flair will tell you that. And, so he played a major part in some of the stuff stumbling, as much as Turner did, and as much as some of these other guys that get blamed for it. Rhodes played a part in it as well, but look, Vince Jr., he did a lot too. I mean, he didn't help the territories at all when he was trying to bury
he killed them.
Yeah, killed AWA, and then AWA. You remember when it used to come on ESPN every day about 3:30?
We would get it in syndication down here in Tampa on the station that's now an ABC station, 28.
Yeah. It was fun to watch. It was fun, and then you had Lawler. Hell, they even brought the Von Erichs up there once in a while, and had Kurt Hennig, and they had they brought the Road Warriors in when they first came in. Scott Hall, he came into the AWA. Yeah, Mark, I read it, bud. Yeah, I'm gonna get better at it. AWA had a ton of talent. Really had a ton of talent. They didn't know exactly how to use their talent, I don't think. But Diamond Exchange, they came up with Diamond Dallas Page came through there before he even wrestled. He was a manager there.
And he was part of the PWF, which was like a CWF revival here in the late 80s. Brendan Baker says, I enjoyed watching a nice 10th inning Reds 1-0 win over the White Sox because Tony La Russa didn't know the rules. Of course, who really does understand these 2021 shenanigans? Interesting.
Three batter rule. Is that what got him? Brandon?
Yeah, Brandon, that's a good follow-up question, because it's either that or I can't imagine La Russa not knowing the runner at second rule that they put in at the 10th inning. I look forward to baseball returning to what it used to be, and we get rid of this extra inning shenanigans. We were talking about that Monday with the 10th inning. I know why they do it. They want to speed the games a little up when they get long because of COVID. COVID's still in play. I'm hearing a lot of talk that looks like we're seeing light at the end of the tunnel with that, and God willing, I hope that's true.
Let's hope so.
But I hope we get rid of these wacky rules for baseball when we get to 2022 and everything is back to normal. Knocking on wood on that.
I actually had somebody on my channel ask a great question. I'm gonna give him credit. Keith White. What if a guy has a perfect game going and we go to the 10th inning and 0-0?
And you put a runner at second, and he's pitching the 10th.
Yeah, because if you don't get the runner out and he advances a runner or something like that, as long as he doesn't score, would it still be a quote-unquote perfect game? I mean, come on. There's so many bad things that's going on with baseball. Look, I don't mind the 7-inning rule. I don't mind that because when you go to a minor league game,
it's 7 innings. It's been for a long time.
Yeah, for a doubleheader, I don't mind that so much. But man, oh man, don't put a runner at second base. They are capable of getting a man on base, stealing a base. Look, teach them how to bunt. That's a problem now. Our problem with 2021 is you've got a first baseman, second baseman, and a shortstop all on the left side, and then you got a third baseman playing the shortstop, and nobody within 75 feet of third base. If you lay a bunt down and it rolls to the outfield, you may get a double out of it. I just don't understand why teams don't take advantage of this. And it looks like management of every team is fine with it, but don't change the rules to make the defensive guys go a certain place. Don't do that. Let the teams burn them a few times, bunt them out and everything like that, and teach them lessons. Don't force a team to have to do something. I don't want to see that happen.
Utah Mike just asked a good question. Big Pauly probably not a fan of Cornette shenanigans. Jim Cornette, I think he's talking about.
Oh, okay.
No, I love Jim Cornette's wrestling mind, but I kind of think that, everybody, if you listen to him for 5 minutes, you're going to know what his political leanings are. And that's fine. That's Jim. It's Jim's show. Let him do what he wants. But his mind for the wrestling business is par excellence. How he explains the history of wrestling, his involvement in all the federations he was in, like from the 80s onward. Nobody could top the brain and the mind of Jim Cornette, except maybe Ron Fuller.
I really like Jim Cornette too. He's been railed out of a lot of places, from one place to the other, because he said he didn't have a financial mind for the business. I don't know,
because he says they never should have made it known that the business didn't work. And can I just point out one thing else, Rob? I went to my first wrestling show at what is now the Youngling Center, which they're using for the Thunderdome, the WWE Thunderdome. It was called the Sundome.
Oh, okay.
This was the year 1989 when New Jersey said, "Well, yes, it's entertainment. It's not for real." Da 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 da. I went to the Sundome and I watched the main event was Hulk Hogan against the Big Boss Man in a cage, because they were going all over the country with it.
Right.
With that main event, and it was the same match every time. There is tape of the match in I think it was the Boston Garden, and Tony Schiavone was calling it with Lord Alfred Hayes, and it was the exact same match almost that I saw in Tampa. But my point is this: everybody knows it's a work, or everybody started figuring out it was a work in 1989. I went to Largo High School. I noted 6 people in the stands, maybe about 4 to 5, 6 people who I knew were classmates of mine at Largo High. So yes, you could say it's a show, but people still come.
Yeah,
that's my point.
Yeah, I remember the first time that I went to wrestling. I went to the Lynchburg Armory, a little small place. Went with my dad. I was, oh my gosh, 8 or 9. And I remember the main event was Johnny Valentine and Ric Flair. They were that was Mid-Atlantic heavyweight title or something like that. Ricky Steamboat was there. Rip Hawk was there. Swede Hansen was there. And it was none of this shaking the hands of the fans after it was over with. These guys, you went in there, you knew when you went in there it was going to be smoke-filled arena because guys were smoking cigarettes and all that type stuff. And then all of a sudden, all the lights went out except right at, right there where the ring was. And that made the ambiance of wrestling so cool that you could sit there and you knew where the show was. It was right there. Now, we always would get upset because anytime they got thrown out the side of the ring, doesn't it always happen? If you're sitting on A side, B side, C side, or D side, it's always going to happen on the opposite side of where you're at. I don't care who you are. Were you there? Yeah, but I didn't get to see it up close what happened, that kind of stuff. But that was the first time that I went with my father. Now, the first time I ever drove to a show, it was actually a closed circuit arena. And we went and saw Starcade, number one. The first Starcade, that was the one with the where Roddy Piper about lost his ear in the dog collar match. The Briscoes, they took on Steamboat and Youngblood. That was just, to this day, you go back and watch that. That is still pure entertainment right there. I loved it. That was one of the best ones I ever went to. I've been to some other pay-per-views since then that NWA had, but it wasn't. And that was probably the best. I just wish I would have been inside the Greensboro Coliseum. I had tickets for it, but I was not able to drive down there that night, so I ended up going to Roanoke Civic Center, watching it on closed circuit. It was, I think it ran us $8, $10, something like that.
I had the honor in 1992 to go up to Jacksonville and watch the War Games match.
Okay.
Pay-per-view at the Jacksonville Coliseum, and that War Games match was 5 stars in Wrestling Observer. So
yeah.
I went to one more show after that. It was like a used car lark here in Largo, which is like a little north and west of me. And I haven't been to a show since, but I figure if you go to a 5-star match, that's pretty much good enough for you. Had a comment here from, let me see, Brendan, what were you saying? Oh, the first match you saw was in Fort Wayne. Kind of a small to medium crowd, early 80s, was Tommy Wildfire Rich, who went at it with bad. So Georgia was up there. The Georgia territory was up there.
Yeah.
I knew they had expanded into the Mid-East around that time, 81, 82. Bud told my brother, Buzz Sawyer, who is from what they now call Hollins High School in St. Pete. It used to be called Dixie Hollins, but then again, they took Dixie out because everybody's sensitive to everything these days. Buzz told my brother to shut up. Loved it.
Yeah, he had a brother named Brett, right?
Brett Wayne Sawyer. And I saw him at that car lot show in 95. Okay. Used car lot show off of Almerton Road. If anybody's in the Tampa Bay area and knows where Almerton is, it's the big northwest, east to west road here in Pinellas County, a little bit north of me, named after a guy named Ulmer. Let me see what here. Stan Stasiak. I saw a comment here about Stan Stasiak take on Andre the Giant, and it took 2 heart punches to bring Andre down to a knee. What you will find out.
His son wrestled in WWE.
Sean
Stasiak. Hey, guys, what was Sean Stasiak's nickname in WWE? Somebody will throw that right up, but that's not a very hard question. You remember it?
I know the answer. I'm just going to go like, Andre, you're going to find, Rob, is almost unbeatable in wrestling's finest, especially in the Battle Royals.
Really?
If you put Andre in a Battle Royal, the babyface Andre, he's going to win almost every time. You put the heel Andre in, he'll probably lose 1 or 2.
He ended up losing the one with my champions in it. You know what? I don't know if I ever had him though. Even though he won the WWE title, he only had
for 30 seconds.
Yeah, he didn't even carry it out of the WrestleMania, did he?
Which is a shame. It was there was a main event, which is still the largest audience ever to watch wrestling on TV.
I think
No,
WrestleMania.
it was the year after 3, but before 4, they did a prime time. 33
Okay.
million people watched it. Andre beat Hulk, but Andre gave the title to
Yeah.
DiBiase, so they had a tournament to find a new champ, which Macho Man won.
Yeah. Andre was a champion, though. Yes, he was a champion at one time. Yeah.
Yeah, good question, Dave Gardner. Good question. Let me see here. We got
Paul Orndorff's brother, Ray Gardner, managed the Wendy's in my hometown in Indiana. Was also on the volunteer fire department. How about that?
Well, Paul played his college football. He played his high school ball in Brandon, Florida, which is just east of Tampa, and then he played his college ball with John Matuzak at the University of Tampa. They dropped their football program in the mid '70s, and it was a long time before we had college football here with USF in the late '90s. So we got some good questions, guys. Keep them coming.
Sports Time Machines actually says he went to WrestleMania 10 and 15. How about that? Very
Okay.
cool.
10 was at the Garden, and I'm trying to think 15 was in Philly, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see how good my brain's working tonight.
Let me tell you. 15, was that in?
15 would have been 99.
All right.
I think Toronto was a couple of years down the road.
What year did you say it was? It would have been what year?
15 would have been 99. 15 would have been the spring of 99. I think that was the year they did the WrestleMania from Philly.
They could have been.
Thinking that was the year. No, Austin had won the title at least once by then.
Was that the year Shawn Michaels?
They used Michaels to drop the belt to Austin, and of course, this was a couple of years removed from Austin and Hart having considerable heat with each other, which ended up with the Montreal Screwjob. Yeah. See what happens when we start talking wrestling? We never stop.
Yeah, just carries on, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
That was almost going to be one of my matches too. I almost made that match, Hart against
the rumor was that they each like Sonny, Tammy Sitch, and that's what they were fighting over. And they didn't, they had a blood feud and they had fights backstage, and they didn't want one to go over the other. So it was Jim Cornette, actually, they say, that came up with that finish of put Hart in the sharpshooter and ring the friggin' bell.
Run. Look at Mark's question. What do you guys think about Ric Flair? How would you rate him as an all-time great?
Up at the top. I think he'd be up there with Fez. Fez was much more of an actual real wrestler, but Flair, his staying power, considering that he got started in the 70s, and it wasn't until very, very recently that he got out of the business because I think he had to have his colon removed. So I don't think you'll ever see him at a full capacity again. He had a photo that was released a couple of days ago with Mongo McMichael, and Godspeed, and God bless the Mongo. Because he was looking rough. He's going through ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, and it just hit him very, very suddenly.
Yeah, I saw him the other day too. He was actually on YouTube. He's been on a YouTube channel, and he's not. He's not progressing well at all. That question, what do you guys think about Ric Flair? Yeah, Mark, top 5 all time. I put him at top 5 all time. I look at 3 things: how well you could work a mic, how well you could sell to the crowd and draw crowds, whether it was draw heat or draw fans cheering for you, and how well you could last in the ring. In the last 40 years, there's only 2 or 3 that even can come close to him. Hogan, no. Hogan
was a showman.
Hogan could draw the crowd. Yes. Hogan could work the mic really well. But how often did you ever see Hogan go 55, 60 minutes? It didn't happen. He had 20, 25, 30-minute matches. Look at all you got to do is go back through Flair's career. Flair had a 60-minute Broadway with I'm talking about on television, like on some of these Clash of Champions with Barry Windham. He did it with and Battle of the Belts 2. Flair really did it with some, with a lot of guys. Now, Flair didn't have all the moves in the world. You knew a lot of the moves Flair was going to do.
Yeah, he had a basic move set.
Yeah, not a lot. But the guy could last 60 minutes, could make, what did he say? Anytime you can get out there and wrestle with a broom and make a broom look good, you're doing your job. And that's the thing. What he did, he went to different territories. He went down to Florida when Barry Windham was down and out. And they said, okay, we need to pick this guy up a little bit. Barry Windham pinned him. And Flair was like, no, this didn't happen. Hogan wouldn't have done that. Hogan wouldn't have done that. Flair did it. Not many in the eras from the 70s to now did the sell jobs and go to the territories that called for him to and drop a belt, even if it was for a week, or make the other guy look like a ton of gold and make you look like crap and then leave town. He did it, but not many people did it.
Hogan would blow up by the 25, 30-minute mark. He didn't have the cardio to go 60 ever. But for what they needed out of him, he did very, very well.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Hulk's
he was exactly
not too far from me in Clearwater.
Exactly what the WWE needed, and Flair was exactly what the NWA needed at the time.
McMahon needed shorter matches, so he brought in a whole bunch of big guys and a whole bunch of the muscle guys, and they could have the 10, 15-minute match, and they could live off that for a while.
Yeah.
My great what-if question is if Vince McMahon they tell Vince McMahon, somebody in the NWA tells him, don't expand, because there was kind of like an underlining, and we don't wish anything bad against Vince, but back in '83, he wanted to expand nationally, and if somebody got into his ear and said, don't do it, what would have happened? That's a great little what-if question that I'd love to hear the wrestling experts talk about one of these days.
Yeah, well, can you imagine? If Turner would have never stepped in, and Crockett would have stayed put in North Carolina, Virginia, South Carolina, Georgia, and they went down and touched Florida once in a while. Went to West Virginia and Maryland, and Tennessee, and a little bit of Alabama. And that was it. Yeah. That was his territory. That was Crockett Promotions territory, and they were on television nationwide, not just in the Southeast. And then once Superstation took over, it was a blast. And then all of a sudden, what's his name ends up buying it? Turner ends up buying it, and then from there, it just kind of
Black Saturday, 1984. We all expected to see Gordon Soley, and we wound up seeing Freddie Miller and Vince McMahon. Yeah. Mark Moe's got a good point here. Amazingly recovered from a broken back. Yes, the airplane crash that ended Johnny Valentine's career. He wasn't supposed to be able to wrestle after that. Of course, he went on and had he dropped a lot of weight after that happened and kept it off, which is also something else that's amazing.
David Crockett
was in that accident.
He was in that airplane crash as well as Tim Woods. And you know who Tim Woods was?
Mr. Wrestling #1.
Yes.
And he was the original Mr. Wrestling.
They had to keep that quiet because Tim Woods was one of the most loved faces in the NWA right there, Mid-Atlantic area. They had to keep it quiet. So they actually, when it happened, they may have went by a different name or something and named all the people that were in the airplane crash. So, and they did something to the effect where Tim Woods' name was not put in the paper. They used somebody else's name. It might have been his actual name or something.
Sounds like that
but
could be
whatever
true.
Happened back then, you couldn't go on a computer and look and see, oh, that's what happened. That's what happened. No, none of that stuff.
It was in the Soley Chronicles, which is a book I have on Kindle about Gordon Soley. He was a racetrack announcer here before he turned to wrestling because wrestling paid a little more money to him. And he was a radio guy here in Tampa on a bunch of local stations in the 50s. But he told the story was told in that book that in one territory, it was Tim Woods. But say in Atlanta, where Gordon also worked after 74, when they tried to take over the Atlanta territory. Ann Gunkel tried to take over the Atlanta territory. Tim Woods was masked. So in one territory he's masked, in another territory he wasn't.
Yeah.
So they're trying to get Mr. Wrestling #1's attention, and Gorton yells out, "Tim!" So kind of gave it all away. So
up there a little bit. Let's see. Who is your Mount Rushmore in wrestling? Wow, top 4.
Unfortunately, I have to put Vince up there because he changed the roadmap. In terms of
what if you just put wrestlers though?
If you just put wrestlers there, Flair, Thez. I think Lou Thez did a lot for the business. I'd put Harley Race in there. And begrudgingly, I'd have to put Hogan up there because Hogan brought a whole new set of fans to the table in the 80s, and they've kind of been there ever since. And their children are now watching wrestling, and they're seeing something totally different now from the way it used to be. And I don't watch a lot of wrestling these days because it's not the same. It's not the same. That'd be my 4.
Ring of Honor to me is the closest thing to wrestling now to watch.
It is.
Impact, I could care less. AEW, what faction are they going to come out with this week? WWE. Now, I've not watched WWE. I don't even know how long. It's not been weeks. It's not been months. It's been years. So I would, if somebody, this is the best way I can tell somebody. If I live 20 minutes away from a place and somebody gave me free tickets, would I go to the WWE event? No. How about you?
They have matches for NXT not too far from me in Pinellas Park, and if they gave me free tickets, I would have the same reaction. No, sir, I wouldn't go.
Okay.
I wouldn't go. I think a lot of the reason why wrestling kind of fell apart in the South is because the football expanded down here, basketball expanded down here, hockey expanded down here. A lot of the big cities back in the 70s and 80s were cities where they were basically college towns, like Knoxville and Tampa. Tampa was really big, but when the Buccaneers got started in 76, they started a slow little decline.
Yeah.
And, the biggest thing they've had in wrestling since then was the WrestleMania that just happened. But, they had problems with that because they held it outdoors, and we had some patches of rain on the Saturday night they did the card.
Yeah.
Tampa wrestling has never been the same. And I think the way things are now, they'll never will be.
Well, you always got hope. Always got hope.
Oh, yeah.
What is Mount Rushmore? I'll give you Mount Rushmore in just a second. Back in the 80s too, man, look, it was pretty much a Hogan versus Flair situation pretty much the whole time until Flair jumped ship to the WWE. I think once he did that, 91 or 92, especially when he just up and left WCW with the belt. He had the belt and took it with him.
He did.
That kind of ruined that side of the fence for me. And that was fun to watch. Now, of course, back late 90s, you had the NWO come back in. They all, to me, after a while, they got old. But at first, it was a good drawing card. I loved to watch it. When it first came out, that NWO, I enjoyed it. My Mount Rushmore, not a lot of difference probably. I'll put somebody into Mount Rushmore that most people probably wouldn't. And the only reason I do it is because this guy made this scene of wrestling so genuine, and he never lost his voice, never screamed and shouted. I liked Nick Bockwinkel.
Yes.
I was a huge Nick Bockwinkel fan. If you ever watched him and watched the way he went around with a tie on, he was proud of being his age. He was like, yes, I'm doing what I have to do. Didn't look at the screen and lie to people. He would simply tell you, I'm the best wrestler in the world, and I really, truly think so, and I'm going to show somebody that I am. So I would probably put him on the Mount Rushmore of all time just because he made the transition, especially in the 80s. He and Ric Flair they didn't all. It wasn't all about the muscles and everything. It was the way they carried themselves, and they carried themselves with a lot of I don't know, they great,
Class.
a lot of class and grace. That's right. So I'm gonna say Bockwinkel. I'm gonna say Flair. You got you got to say Hogan. Um, and then I guess probably it would be Luthez. Um, there's anytime you talk about a Mount Rushmore, some you're gonna miss. San Martino did a lot for the sport, and a really really underlying guy that I think did a lot for the sport and doesn't get a lot of credit for it is Ivan Koloff.
Yes.
Ivan Koloff sold being a Russian for 30, 40 years.
Indeed.
People believed it until the day he retired, and then he came out and said, look, this is the way I talk. I'm from Canada, and I did a great job he could pat himself on the back because he did a great, great job. People now don't look back at him and say, oh, my God, I can't stand this guy. They realize the situation, and now you go back and watch some of his matches, especially when he won the WWF title. That was a great time in back in the early 70s. And he's one of the guys I think doesn't get enough credit for being a heel that needed to be there back in the day, and he was just one of them. But he played the role really great. I love Wrestling Finest, the best PC game on the market for
Oh,
wrestling.
let me bring that up because I wanna make a
Arnold's
point
good guy.
here with Arnold Hunter.
Yeah,
We are
Arnold.
going to endeavor within the next few weeks. I sound like Mean Gene Okerlund. I'm going to endeavor here within the next couple of weeks to have Tom Bogle on. I haven't talked to Tom about it yet. I was my first guest shot on Al Red Sox Fan channel. We had Tom Bogle on, and we discussed wrestling's finest. And we got Al watched my videos, bought the game. You watched my videos, you bought the game. So I definitely want to have Tom on to discuss wrestling's finest a little bit more. So Arnold, yeah, that's going to be a little. We're going to try to do this like once a week on the channel on YouTube. This will be a YouTube exclusive. I'll post it later.
You guys in chat, get yourself a camera, get a channel going. And even if you don't have a channel going, Big Pauly can have you as a guest. So
yeah. Go get OBS Studio. I just switched to Streamlabs OBS. It's $20 a month, but if you want to pay it for a year, it's way less. It's like $150. But I'm just going to do it for a little bit, see how it goes.
Okay.
Streamlabs OBS, and that's giving me to see. I used to be a channel where all the stuff I did was taped. I recorded it, I put it up to YouTube. With this, it's just live. Wham bam, thank you, man. It's up, it's on. I have very little left to do. So go get yourself Streamlabs OBS. Dave Gardner was the first person to mention that I caught. And I looked at it over the weekend last week, and yeah, that's definitely something I want to keep doing is live streams. The way OBS Studio, there is a difference between OBS and Streamlabs OBS. OBS Studio, you kind of sort of could do a live chat, but you got to pull up the YouTube window and you got to post it somewhere on the two monitors. The thing about Streamlabs OBS is you do a chat, it's there for you. It's there for you within the program. It's over on the right side, depending on how you want to set up a Streamlabs OBS. So that's my little streaming advice for everybody. So I got that in. Let me just check the chat. Bruno Sammartino, you were just talking about him. I think he's got to be over. He's got to be mentioned in terms of the Mount Rushmore because he held it twice, and he held it for nearly 12 years,
something like that. Vern Gagne's got to be listed as one too, even though he owned his own business.
Yes,
but he was willing to give it up, and he never ever lit it up to where his son was one of the greatest, and his son never won a title, although he owned the AWA for all those years.
Who's the fellow in Nashville who was the promoter's son who got a big push? Well, I'm thinking a little farther back. I'm thinking of Goulas, George Goulas. George Goulas was the guy I was thinking of.
Nick,
Where
Nick
Nick
Goulas?
Goulas ran Nashville. He split off with the Jarretts in the
Okay.
70s because it was basically a combined Nashville-Memphis promotion
Okay.
up until the late 70s, and then they split off, and Nick had this insane idea to push his son to the hilt, and he wasn't that great a wrestler.
And then down in Mid-South, they had Watts.
Bill Watts. Back in the days of the 80s, this is big because I met Kareem Muhammad once at a local mall, and he was stopping, and Ray Candy was his original name, and then they made him a bad guy and turned him into Kareem Muhammad, and they were the Zambui Express with what
was his name? He was a manager in AWA in the late 80s. He did some wrestling late 80s, early 90s. Johnny.
I think you are referring to Luscious Johnny Valiant.
No, later than that. Okay. Johnny, somebody help me out, guys. The guy was kind of a big guy. I think he had bleached blonde hair, like 91, 92, right around the time when they were just about ready to fold the AWA. Johnny Stewart was his name. Johnny Stewart.
Gotcha.
And he got together, and they carried on the AWA belt. I don't know where they got it from, but the AWA title. And then finally they folded somewhere around 07 or 08. But
yeah, they have tried to keep the AWA alive in various pockets of the country.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is probably spot on, because they tried
AWA Superstars or something's what they called it.
They tried reforming the AWA out in the West.
Yeah,
and it would make sense that somebody would pick it up and try it in Carolina in the aughts, because they had been out of business from the Gagne end for about 15 years by that point.
And in fact, this guy called himself not Gagne, but Gagne or something like that. He changed his name to that. Dave Gagne or something like that. You can go back and check it out, but it's Carolina Wrestling Federation. And I actually knew one of the guys that helped run that organization back in the day. And it was out of Burlington, North Carolina. And they had their own TV studio and everything. So they were broadcasting out in North Carolina on a weekly basis for an hour.
Now, Sports Time Machine just brought up an interesting name, Eric Watts, who is the son of Bill, who was a quarterback for Louisville, I think, at one point. And the WCW gave him a run in the early 90s. And, yeah, he was pushed over. They had a TV title tournament, and I think Watts made the finals, and they had to job him out to somebody. They were making a big deal out of Watts just to blow him up.
He reminded me of a kid back in Mid-Atlantic times when they had this guy, Kelly Kaniski.
Yes.
It was Gene Kaniski's kid. He was awful. I mean, oh, good Lord. The only one maybe worse than Kelly Kaniski was the guy.
I have a feeling I know what you're going to say.
I don't know. This guy was the in Starrcade #1.
I know it.
He was a manager. I mean, not a manager. He did the refereeing.
Oh.
And his son was a junior, and he won the Mid-Atlantic title. Now, let me tell you.
Yeah, it's who I'm thinking of. It's Angelo Mosca Jr.
Angelo Mosca Jr. was awful.
Yes.
Angelo Mosca Jr. Oh, good Lord.
Because they'd only let him babyface down here, and he was terrible as a face.
Oh, he was.
They had to give him a little bit of oomph and make him a heel.
Oh, my goodness. Go back. Any of you guys want to go watch somebody that trips over their own tongue, trips over their own feet?
This guy couldn't work.
He was terrible. I mean, if you want to watch somebody that's not as good a wrestler as you guys are, and I'm sure you guys are better wrestlers than this guy, go back and watch Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling and punch in Angelo Mosca Jr. It was sad. It really was sad. It's funny that you would have even thought to even know that, but there it is. If you know wrestling real well, all you had to do is watch that. I mean, because they didn't have many sucker wrestlers back in the day. They had guys named Bill White. He was a jobber, but he was a tough jobber. They had Vinny Valentino, a tough jobber. Charlie Fulton, a tough jobber. They had the tough guys that come in there. Jeff Sword, a tough guy.
But even the jobbers were more credible back then.
Yeah. David Sammartino. Does anybody remember the sucker job he did? Was it in WWE?
Maybe.
Or WWF, where he allowed the jobber to beat him? Do you remember that?
I don't personally.
Oh, what was the guy's name, guys? David Sammartino got pissed. He got upset. He said, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of this. And then he just laid down and let this guy beat him. But I mean, it's if you look in YouTube, all you got to do is search it out on YouTube. It is so funny to watch. He's been on videos now and said, "Oh yeah, I just got sick of it, and I just let him beat me." And he immediately, I think, got fired after that because they were going to give him a push for like one of the titles or something. And I mean, they had this guy. Oh, they were talking about this guy's trash or whatever. He should run over him in 30 seconds. And then the next thing you know, he lays down, the guy rolls him up. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm sure somebody knows out there, but yeah, David Sammartino got so sick of the business. Ron Shaw. And I mean, all you got to do is watch it one time. I mean, that was one that was funny to watch. Now, maybe not to the level of watching the Mulkey brothers. Does anybody remember who the Mulkeys beat? Randy and Bill Mulkey. Yeah.
They beat the Thunderfoots, didn't they?
No, it wasn't the Thunderfoots. No, it wasn't. Somebody I know. Somebody
good. Let me just do a reset here, Rod, telling everybody we're just past the 10 o'clock hour on the East Coast. This is the Meet, M-E-E-T, kind of like, a sit down in the mob with Big Pauly. I'm Big Pauly. That's Rob. Probably going to go about another half hour to an hour. So everybody in chat, if you got a few mind benders for us, lay them on us.
I'll give it 2 more minutes. And we'll see if somebody comes up with that. Who was that the Mulkeys beat on national television to make it to the Jim Crockett Senior Memorial Cup? Because not the Galaxians. It wasn't the Galaxians. No.
Oh, you're seeing the chat better than I am. It was a team of note, I would think. Am I right on that front?
Well, what it was.
Let's see who got it here.
Phantom Submission. That's what it was. Okay, yeah. But yeah, Sammartino gave it up. He walked out of the ring. These guys, they had them noted as the Pacific Coast champions or something. And they're coming in and they're take over. All it was 2 masked men from the Mid-Atlantic area that all they did is bring them in, and they ended up, before it was over with, they had their mask turned sideways and all, so you could tell they never wore a mask in their life.
Yeah.
So it was a couple of guys that was jobbers that played the part really, really well. Another minute from now, I'll give the answer myself, but I got a feeling somebody's going to know it.
Well, you stumped me, Rob.
Yeah.
So
the Mulkeys beat. And then after that, they come out of the ring. It's unbelievable. I can't believe it.
They made a big deal out of it. I remember that.
That's the thing. When you wrestle and you can't believe you just won, it's time to go to another profession when you come out and say, I can't believe we just won.
Yeah, they made a big, big deal out of them winning. I remember that.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to give the answer. They were the Gladiators.
Yeah, okay.
The Gladiators.
It's probably somebody.
It was the Gladiators.
Not to be confused with the Gladiators of the WWF.
Because what happened was they had one of them picked up. He had one of them picked up, and one of them was on his hands and knees.
Here's Arnold. I love talking wrestling history. I don't know a lot about wrestling history before 1985. Kind of in the same boat. I first time I ever watched wrestling was 76, right before the Bucks got started. The angle was Steve Kern and Bob Roop, and Kern's father was a POW. in
Yeah.
Vietnam, and I didn't really know what a POW was in
Right.
Vietnam when I was 4 years old. But Kern, having his family been insulted, jumps over the desk, goes after Roop, and they're showing this wide shot. You don't see what's going on underneath Gordon's desk. Papers are flying everywhere. It was good little theater of the mind. And when
Yeah.
you're 4
Yeah.
years old, like I was
You
just about to
mind it.
turn 5. It's like,
Yeah.
whoa,
Yeah.
this is long before Jerry Springer made all of this
Yeah.
a popular deal. So, yeah.
And Johnny Valentine, Wahoo, I'm going to break your leg again. And then he used to
Oh, I've seen that.
I broke Wahoo's leg.
It was Greg Valentine. It was Greg that did that.
Yeah.
But I've seen that video where,
Greg.
and Wahoo sold it perfectly.
Yeah. And now we've got Wahoo McDaniel in his living room here. We're going to talk to him in there. That was pretty close. Yeah,
You
he
were
was.
close.
He was
You were
close.
close, Mike. Utah Mike. Let's see what else we have here.
Very close.
What did Mark Mo say? That's the most famous Phantom submission. Yeah, Shaw. We were talking about Shaw and David San Martino. David didn't last long in the business, didn't he? I think
his head and heart wasn't in it a lot.
Found out how tough it was and probably had second thoughts.
Yeah. Now, I have seen wrestling. The thing is, wrestling nowadays isn't like it used to be. Now they're jumping off cliffs and all that shit. Kind of like, I don't know if you ever saw the one where it was New Jack taking on this guy.
Yes, and it's garbage.
They were on a what do you call it?
He was on like a scaffolding, and the guy's on the table.
A scaffold match, and
the guy's on the table, and he jumps 40 feet. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, that one. New Jack's done so much wild shit that you kind of have to keep it.
I mean, that's getting to the point now. Can you imagine if you had a 10-year-old or 8-year-old, you actually took that? Number one, any parent that would have brought a kid, 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old to any ECW event is stupid anyway. Crazy. Yeah. Because I lived in Philly. I knew where the arena was. And it was not in the greatest of towns, the greatest part of town either. It was right there by the shipyard, right there at the river. And it wasn't in a great part of town. And they call it the Alhambra Arena, and then they call it the some number arena, 1,300 or something, 1,100 arena, whatever they called it. But anyway, that's where they wrestled all the time, and it was just a glorified building. That's all it was, and they just
kind of like the Sportatorium in Tampa where they did all the matches in TV.
Yeah, when they had Sportatorium in Dallas. Have you ever seen that video?
Oh yeah, we used to get world class all the time.
And seen the video where the Von Erichs actually went and toured it before they tore it down and stuff like that. Yeah, that was pretty cool. I mean, places like that really, really, really wanted to have good wrestling. That they hated to give it up when the crowds just stopped coming. Bulldog Bob Brown, he was a heck of a wrestler. He really was. He was one of my favorites. I used to see him a lot in Maryland and here in Virginia. They was in that Central States area. Bulldog Bob Brown was a bad guy. He was one bad, mean guy, though.
To Utah Mike and to you, Rob, ECW I kind of liked. It did have its moments because it was something a bit more gritty than what WCW and WWF were doing at the time. But some of the stuff they would do, it was just too extreme. Yeah. Too extreme. But that was Heyman's little shtick.
And then if you could stand the announcer screaming like a little girl all the time. I don't even know what the guy's name was. Used to scream.
Joey Styles.
Whoa, my goodness. It was just terrible. That didn't help it a lot either.
If you did it once in a while, fine. But to do it like every 3 or 4 move sets, that got over the top.
Like everything is new. Everything's new. You've seen it 100 times and you're just screaming for the hell of it. It's old. It's old.
probably wore his vocal cords down to a nub. Let's see what we got here. We got Mark Mo. Oh yeah, it was. I'm going through the chat here. And that was Sports Time Team. I went to EACW from 95, 97. They had their moments. They had their moments, and they had some good moments, and they had some good champions. They had Shane Douglas. Shane Douglas kind of came of age in ECW. Taz, even though he was a little guy, you believed that he could kick anybody's ass on the planet.
Rob Van Dam.
Van Dam was another good one.
He was abrasive. I didn't never like him. I never liked him. He wasn't my type, my style guy. But you either really liked him or really hated him. I just really never liked him. I think there's a lot of wrestlers that are that way. I think Jeff Jarrett is the same way. The way he comes across. All right, slap nuts. Come on, bring it on, Slappy, and all this kind of stuff. Never was a big fan of his, but he always had a way of making things volatile, whether you liked him or you didn't.
That would not get over today. That would not get over today. I guarantee you. Him calling people slap nuts and slappy.
Slappy.
ECW, they had some great characters, and Heyman would bring guys in who could make his wrestlers look good. Like they had the Steiners in, and they had the Road Warriors in back at a time when it was a nice little. They had on the first pay-per-view ECW did. They had the guys from Japan, the Michinoku guys over, and they had a nice little 6-man tag team match. Love the 6-man tag team matches. When we got a satellite dish in the early 90s. And my family did, and I was still living with my parents at the time. And I would always sneak in and put the dish on the Mexican stations so I could watch Lucha Libre from 6 to 8. I think it was on Galavision, and I never seen Lucha Libre before, and it was wonderful how they did it. All they had their little own set of rules, and they had the 2 out of 3 falls matches, and you had to pin everybody to win a fall. It was nice.
They didn't worry if he tagged or not. They just anytime one got thrown,
one guy gets off, another guy comes on. Absolutely, it was nice little frenetic action. Okay, Terry Funk, Mark Mo says. Oh yeah, Terry Funk was in ECW. Austin, before he went to the Steve Austin, before he went to the WWF, did a stint in ECW. I saw him in that card in Jacksonville. I had a good feeling he was going to be a big star someday. Let me see here. Just trying to get everybody who's chatted about something. Sometime I think we're up to date on all of that. What do you think of Smoky Mountain Wrestling, by the way, Rob?
Smoky Mountain Wrestling was pretty fun.
Cornette's group, yeah.
Yeah, think about it. The one guy, if you go back and watch Florida Championship Wrestling from 83 to 87, 88, the one guy that wrestled every week and totally got his ass handed to him every week ends up going to Smoky Mountain Wrestling and becomes a tag team champion. And his name was Jim Backlund,
who they call Jimmy Del Rey.
Jimmy Del Rey. And then he ends up going, Jimmy Del Rey was, that was his name in WWE. And then I think he ends up going
to Smoky Mountain and becomes a big star.
Back to Backlund. I'm not sure. But anyway, he was fun. He was fun to watch because, number one, to take an ass whipping like some of these guys do, like in Mulkeys, like a lot of these guys that just used to take tail kickings every week. Number one, they had to be a seller of it, and they had to sell it good. And boy, oh boy, remember the Gangsters and Smoky Mountain Wrestling? Oh yeah, the Gangsters. That was New Jack. He was in part of that. Yeah, they had some good wrestlers down there. They really did. And that was something about, do you remember, I don't know if you remember back, October 88.
Thanks for dropping by, Mark, by the way. He's saying take care.
In New Orleans in the Superdome when the Road Warriors jumped the Midnight Express. And I mean, they just beat the hell out of them. And they took the belts from them and all that. And then they tried to make Midnight Express a a face team after that, and all that, and tried to make the Road Warriors a heel team. And that was just not going to fly because the Road Warriors were such over with everybody. It didn't matter what they did. People were going to cheer for them. But they went down to New Orleans. If you ever get a chance to watch this one, guys, watch it. It was Road Warriors versus the Midnight Express, New Orleans Superdome. And I mean, they beat the total hell out of the Midnight Express. I don't even think it lasted 10 minutes. Blood everywhere. And, that was a great sale job by the Midnight Express. And that was one of my favorite matches that I ever watched just because that really showed one heel team that was becoming a face team. They just beat the crap out of them. They turned.
The one thing that killed
the
Florida off in '87, I feel, was when they brought Bruiser Brody in to face Lex Luger for the purpose of to send Luger out of the territory because nobody liked Luger. Even Gordon Solie didn't like Luger.
Down in Florida,
they had a steel cage match in Lagan, and Luger just at one point just said, I'm getting the hell out of here.
Yeah, he jumped over. That's still very, very famous. They even tried stabbing Dusty Rhodes' eye out. Yeah, it was the Road Warriors. They had
that kicked Dusty to the WWE. Well, actually, he came down to PWF for a bit, and then he went to WWE.
He ended up staying. He actually was. I think he gave him 3 weeks off or something after that. They gave him a vacation, but he was still the head writer with WCW then. I think he was.
Yeah, and then suddenly the Florida territory is revived and Dusty's a part of that. And then a few months later, Dusty's in WWF.
Yeah.
So that's what happened there. Crime Routine's laying down some stuff here. Let me see what we got. Del Rey picture, Heavenly Bodies, not to be confused with the Greens.
Yeah.
So the Greens of Memphis, Don and Al Green, they turned heels that night, Rob. Yes, they did have a run as heels around 88, 89. Best heel turn ever was Barry Windham on Lex Luger. I love that to death because they did it all of a sudden. Luger had just turned face to repel from the Horseman, and then they did a title switch, and they did it with Windham turning heel, and by God, it was one of the better things WCW did around that time. But turning Windham heel was just, why didn't they think about that earlier?
Yeah. Oh, man. I was just reading up something today. I didn't realize until today was the first time I realized it. I didn't realize Blackjack Mulligan got stabbed back in '74. Did you realize?
I did not, but he would have been
up. In a wrestling match. He was in a wrestling match. Somebody help us out who he's with. And it was
a lot of the heels got stabbed back then.
Because
Ole Anderson got stabbed back then.
People bought it. Now, Arn Anderson actually got stabbed by another wrestler. Sid Vicious did that, But this was actually a fan that actually, when he was running out of the arena, ended up cutting him. I think it was in Boston Garden.
Might have been.
I will try to come up with the name before we leave tonight. But, it said on there Bob Windham, which is Blackjack Mulligan, and ended up getting stabbed in the leg. Somebody had, what do they say? Chicken fat, pig fat grease or something on a knife and cut him with that. I don't know. It was supposed to. I don't know if somebody was trying to get him to get a disease or something. But anyway, it ended up cutting him in his leg, and he ended up having to get some stitches. And I think he was out of action for 3 or 4 weeks. But then he came back, and they really didn't. They didn't discuss it on TV, but. I just read something about it today. I had no idea it ever had happened. I think I watched the Barry Windham shoot today, and he was talking to somebody about it and said something about when my dad got stabbed back in '74, I think. So a lot of stuff like that happened.
It is amazing, Rob, that the heels of the 70s and 80s, before it was widely known that wrestling was a work, that we didn't lose a wrestler due to something like that, an incident like that, because it did happen to several of the heel wrestlers in the 60s and 70s because they didn't know it wasn't real.
Right. And then, over money purposes or over other certain things, somebody like a Bruiser Brody in '88.
Oh, that was a sad little tale.
Yeah,
there.
He ends up going down to Mexico, and then that is still to this day a lot
Puerto
of
people.
Puerto Rico, yeah. It's still questioned to this day exactly who did it, how it happened. But Tony Atlas says he knows what happens, but I don't think anybody can tell us exactly what happened back then because nobody was really there. All they can do is say, well, they knew he wanted his money and this kind of thing because he never stayed in one territory very long. That was one guy that ran all through the country, and he could write his own paycheck because people knew when he was going to wrestle, he put asses in seats because people loved to watch him.
If anybody has not watched the Dark Side of the Ring episode where they talk about the death of Bruiser Brody in Puerto Rico, it's been out long about, let's say, over a year or so. I saw it about a year ago. Go see it. Go see it. The Dark Side of the Ring, that's on the Vice Network, so I'm giving them a nice little free plug here. Cool. See what we got here. Okay, nobody has chatted since we last.
I ended up buying this game because I saw you playing it. Have you got a game in mind, kind of in the back of your mind, like, I've seen this played, now I want to buy it?
You know what I would want to do, Bob? I want to play. I've had the Stratomatic computer game back in the late 90s, but I want to get the board game, but I want to wait until after I turn 50 to do it.
Oh, okay.
Because I have never played Strat, the board game. I played, I was talking about Surecrow earlier on. I played Pursued the Pennant for a while, loved that, but I have never played the board game of Stratomatic. And I would like to get that, and I would like to play that. Now, I looked into it, I'll say about a week or two ago. The shipping is sky high for a board game from Glen Head, New York, to here. It's like $18. I'm gonna wait a little bit, see if COVID improves, if the shipping rates go down. But I would definitely want to get my hands on the Stratomatic board game. I wasn't doing board games until I did Glory Days Boxing, and I thank you so much, Anthony, for introducing me to that. I won a contest of his a few weeks back, and that's how I got the board game. And we're going to play it again tomorrow. We're going to do a couple light heavyweight fights on YouTube Live, starting about 7 o'clock or so, maybe a little earlier. And we're going to do Grand Slam Wrestling on Saturday, and Sunday will be a light day because it's Mother's Day, and my mother has Alzheimer's. I'm going to say that quietly because she lives with me right here. And
your mom?
Yeah, I want to say that publicly. That she's not.
My mom's only a quarter of a mile away, so we'll see how she's doing. She took a fall, and
my mom did too.
And she actually had to get stitches
before the end of the year.
Back a week or two ago, and she is coming along. This is her head now. She's it went straight. Whatever it was, she hit her head on the head and just went straight in because it was a pool of blood, probably 6 feet around by the time we got to the house. And she'd been on the floor about 30 or 45 minutes because my dad, he can't walk. Here's my dad. He only has one eye, can't use his left side. He's 87 years old. He heard Mom screaming and set his cane to the side. His left side, he's had a stroke. So he put a phone in his left hand and just had it stay there. Walked down the staircase without his cane, then had to go about 60 feet. And he was just walking, grabbing stuff best he could, got the phone over to her so she could call us. So, and then we immediately went down there and got her and took her to the emergency room where she got her stitches. But Dad posted something that day. I said, Superman is only loose, and he's 87 years old. So
that's the best way to look at it. That's the best way to look at it.
Because he doesn't know how to use his phone, and that's what one thing I guess we should do is teach him how to do it. But people can do things that you don't dare think they can do when they've got adrenaline running through them, and if they really, really care about somebody or love somebody that much, they can do more than you think they can. Yeah, I've heard of people lifting cars up and stuff like that, which is just no chance. But I believe it because you just don't know how much strength you've got in your body. I don't think until you watch something happen that you just have no control or nothing over, and you're sitting there watching somebody just dissolve in front of your eyes. I mean, I don't doubt it, but I tell you one thing, it is something wild to watch when you actually watching somebody do something when they have that kind of stuff going on in their body. It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy.
Bryan Baker, I thank you for pointing out the fact that Netflix also carries Dark Side of the Ring. I just picked up Netflix to watch Glow recently. I thought that was pretty good. And Alison Brie and Betty Gilpin are not bad to look at either. But Brandon, thank you very much for your comments. I know. It's everybody gets older, and we all got to deal with this sooner or later. I lost my father about 30 years ago, so
really,
I'm not looking forward to the replay. I went to the Super Bowl. We had bought Super Bowl tickets. We had won Super Bowl tickets through a local grocery promotion, cash and carry here in Tampa. It was the Bills-Giants Super Bowl. And that was he stayed around.
Was that the wide right one?
The very one. Mm-hmm. And my dad couldn't go to the game. My mom couldn't go to the game because my father was sick with cancer. And he had some health issues from about the time I graduated high school onward to early 91. And I'm with my girlfriend the next day. I get a phone call. He's gone. So, yeah. So you got to enjoy the good times while you can. That's my moral to the story on all of that.
How old was your father when
he was 63. He was 63. He had me late in his life. He had me mid-40s.
Okay.
So now I am older than he was when he had me, so I'm probably not going to be able to extend the family tree any. But anyway, yeah, just enjoy the good times while you have it. Enjoy these games. It's like what Al Red Sox fan says all the time. Doesn't matter what you have as long as you're enjoying it. Yep. That's why you're there. And that's kind of the way. Guys, if you got any last thoughts, let's get them out because let's see here. It's 10:28. We'll keep going here, maybe about another 5 to 10 minutes.
Let's see. What can we think about? What has been your best match on the PC game so far? What has been the closest match or something that you were like, it got down to if you went an hour and may have been upset or major upset or something? Who's the biggest one?
Actually, the one match that sticks out to my mind because I did it on for YouTube was the match between Farmer Burns and Jim Lundos. Burns had been the champion for like the longest time. And I'm trying to think, Jesus, how am I going to get the belt off of him? And once I use a shooter, and then he drops the title by about year 3, which was last year, I figure if once the shooter loses the belt, I'm going to get him off of him, I'm going to retire him, and we're going to eventually get to the post-war guys onward. Yeah. So I'm thinking, Jesus, how am I going to get the belt off of him? He fights Jim Lundos, babyface, and I'm not afraid of using 2 baby faces or 2 heels because I think that's part of the business. I try to set it up that way where there's an off chance that you could have 2 baby faces in a match or 2 heels in a match. Probably got to explain that on a video one of these days. But anyway, few minutes in, there was the ally who comes in and he reverses a pinning position. Boom, Lundos is the champ. And I'm like, you'll hear my reaction to it all. And I'm like, I don't believe it. I don't believe what I just saw. Burns is now no longer, I'm trying to contain my glee about all of this. I'm just going, I'm gobsmacked. I'm like, Lundos just beat Burns.
How long ago was this happened?
This happened late last year. That was
Okay.
Farmer Burns against Jim Lundos.
Okay.
And that started all the changes with the world title that we've had recently, although Dory Funk's been holding it for a while now. Let me
Okay.
see here. Breaking news, Pauly. Let me see this. I just opened the Perfect Team Pack in OOTP while listening to you, and you pulled a 100. Outstanding, Brendan. Outstanding. I mean that with all sincerity. The running thing with me doing the OOTP Perfect Team is I never get to pull a perfect card. I went through OOTP 21 entirely, and Brendan and Luke Brown will attest to this. And I went the whole year. I played it like once every couple, like twice a week, and then once a week. Never pulled a 100. 100's the best card you can get, and they're like a very select few in the game that have the perfect card. So Brendan just pulled a 100. Were you pulling bronzes, Brendan? Were you pulling golds? I'd be kind of curious about this. So yeah, Bryce Harper of the Phillies, of course, now. And
he hasn't played.
I was just about to ask you.
Yeah, he hadn't played. Wrist injuries would happen. When he was moving out of the way to get from getting hit in the face,
he messed his forehead.
Messed his wrist up as well. So it's actually his, let's see, top wrist. So it's his left wrist. So it's his throwing hand.
They were playing the Cardinals that night, if I recall. Did they buy the story from the pitcher that it was an accident? I mean, it kind of looks a little suspicious, him plunking two guys in a row.
Right.
And he's acting, I'm sorry, I didn't do it.
One of them in the face, then one of them in the back. It's just, you can't buy that one. I don't care where you're selling it.
Hey, Luke, how are you, sir? Luke gave you a pot of gold, and you still couldn't do it. That's right. Luke overpaid for a card that I had so I could get a whole bunch of these perfect points, and I'm going through all these bronze packs. This was a couple of months ago. Still couldn't get the perfect because OOTP 21 was winding down, and they were bringing up OOTP 22. So that's how that happened. Yeah, I hope he stays at 100 too, Brendan, because there is a difference between live cards and historical cards. The live cards, it's like the stock market. They go up and down in value. You could hold a bronze card. You could hold, say, Pete Fairbanks of the Rays, and he could be a 68, and he has a few good outings, and the next thing you know, you're holding a silver or you're holding an 80 of gold. So that's another thing about the game. The cards do not stay the same. They appreciate and depreciate with time.
I'm sure if you had a card of the kid that threw the no-hitter for the Orioles last night, probably would have went up a lot.
John Means, I would think, would probably, I don't know where he was in terms of his rating in the perfect team, but I imagine he'll go up at least 10, 15 points.
So 3 official no-hitters as of beginning of May. How many
hasn't happened since '69, or did I just steal your thunder there?
How many think happens during the whole season now? Official. We won't count the fourth one, but
I think we could get to 5 or 6.
I think maybe 7 or 8.
Possibly.
It's only been a month. It's only been a month in the season. There's still 5 more months to go, and there's some pitchers this year going 105, 110, 115, 120 pitches. Kid for the Phillies today had a 1-hitter going into the final inning, and he went 100. I want to say 124 pitches or whatever. Zach Wheeler, and he pitched a 2-0 shutout. Ended up being a 3-hitter, but
and they'll overanalyze that to death. Oh, he shouldn't be out there for 120 pitches. Hell, Nolan Ryan. Routinely in a game would go to 200, like 180, 190, 200. His arm kind of
he threw
stood the test of time.
That's one arm. It lasted and lasted and lasted. And as he got older, threw it harder.
And I don't think was it an arm injury that ended his career, but he was like almost 50 by the time it ended.
Yeah, right.
I'm trying to remember if it was an arm injury or it was something else that kind of put the kibosh on his career. But that arm, good heavens!
I tell you who had the most lively arm I ever watched. J.R. Richard.
Yes.
J.R.
Yes. The
Richards.
film I've seen on Richard, yes.
It almost seemed like when the ball left his hand, it was going to the glove, and there's no chance in hell you could hit it.
Yeah.
It looked
Had he
like
not had his stroke, he probably would have been one of the more dominating pitchers, I'd say at least up to 85.
Yeah.
Great what if for you OOTP players is what if J.R. Richards never gets hurt? I don't know how you would rig the game to do that, but that'd be another thing. Houston probably could have. They made the league championship series in '80, even though they didn't have Richards like half the year or a little less than half the year. You kind of wonder if he had stayed around, maybe Houston winds up being the dynasty of the '80s, even though it really wasn't a dynasty of the '80s. Dodgers, maybe.
Early '80s.
Yankees were still good, but then they fell apart by about
well,
81.
The Royals played real well.
Royals
and Cardinals.
Cardinals were always there.
Yeah. Let's see. It really wasn't a dynasty in the '80s so much. '90s, people want to say the Braves, but hell, the Braves only won one, right?
I think so. I think the Braves only won in '96 when they had a little bit of a shortened season. They played 144 games.
And they had
95.
They had the best pitching staff for 5 straight years.
Right.
I mean, they had guys. Any of the 5 of them could win anytime. And I think that at one time they had 5 15-game winners, I want to say.
They had Steve Avery. They had Tom Glavine.
Kent
they had
Merker.
Maddox. They had Kent Merker. And eventually they'd get Denny Nagel.
They got Smoltz, too.
And they got Smoltz. I'm totally forgetting about Smoltz. They had so many good pitchers, they wound up putting Smoltz in the bullpen. Means is up to 67 now. Was he like an iron before, Brendan?
Let's see where he goes when they re-rate him, he said,
Yeah, he was a 67 now. So he's saying, so he's 67 now. So he'll probably get bumped up to like, which would be a silver card. And 75. The people holding, the silver cards are, if you sell them, they're worth a little more perfect points. And then when you get to gold, then it's 1,000 perfect points at least. If you had a bronze, it would be 25.
Now, how much does a pack cost?
You can buy cards on OOTP, but you accrue perfect points for achievements that happen in the game with your team. Like if your team scores 20 runs in a game, you'll get like a whole bunch of points. Or if you have one player that gets 6-7 runs, or bats in
4 hits,
8, 9, 10,
4 or 5 hits in the game or something.
If your players have an accomplishment of note, you get points for that, and you could get a bronze for 1,000, a gold for 3, and that's usually it. But sometimes they have diamond cards available for 10. Diamonds are like the next to highest card you can get, and then sometimes they have historical cards for 5,000, and historicals are worth a lot of money. Not money, but perfect points.
Oh, okay. I am not familiar with it.
It's interesting. It's interesting. Ooh. It's like I was telling you on your channel, Rob. It's like Jim Rummy with cards. That's what it. Jim Rummy with baseball cards. That's exactly what it is.
Okay.
Okay, guys. Last call. We're at 10:39, and we wanted to go a couple of. I had fun doing this on this end.
A lot of fun. We talked a lot of wrestling tonight. That's for sure.
But a lot of the people who are on here on the chat. Love the wrestling. Love the wrestling's finest. Some of them play their own games. Like you have Slam Wars also.
I have Slam Wars, and I also have Legends of Wrestling as well.
Legends of Wrestling. Red Sox.
Phil Singer Games.
Phil Singer Games. Dave Little plays that, and he does a card every Saturday night. Mm-hmm. That's very, very good. Check out that. As Al would say, check out that wonderful channel. I'm mocking Al. I don't want to mock Al.
Dave's a good guy too. Dave's a real good guy.
Dave Little, he has that My Journey with Jesus, I think it's called.
Yes,
and that's very good. And I watch that every week. I try to watch that every week. I still can't believe it never happened. He's talking about the fact that I never got a perfect card. But because by the end of the year that the game's going on, that the perfect cards get more scarce. So you got to get one early, I think. Otherwise, you don't get one. Brendan, he's at 67 now. You're right. You were right, Rob. 67 now. Well, guys, I think that's going to do it for this. We were on, let me see here in the upper left corner, we were on an hour and 40 minutes. Rob, I want to have you back intermittently as we go through this weekly series. I definitely want to get Tom Bogle on. Was talking to Anthony of Bleacher Blems Gaming about coming on, and he was saying he was having printing issues getting the new card set released. And I hope I'm not talking out of school saying that. But as soon as the issues there, I want to have Anthony on because we could probably talk boxing all night. He's probably much better on the 21st century of boxing, what's happened the last 20 years. Yeah. Although I think I'm good on the 20th. So and cool. He's good on the 20th too, 20th century of boxing. Yeah. And I want to try to get a book on Kindle. I was looking for a certain book that was talking about how the mafia, La Cosa Nostra, had an influence on the middleweight division. Because if you've ever seen Raging Bull, they openly talk about how Jake LaMotta had to take a dive for a fighter named Billy Fox, and he got suspended over it in the late 40s for a while because LaMotta had no clue how to take a dive. And then he came back and beat the Frenchman Marcel Cerdan to win the title. So he did what they call the Joe Pesci, who plays his brother in that, they call it the old flip-flop. And, he took a dive. And, boxing is a lot like wrestling, more than you would think it is.
Yeah. Okay. And, before you know it, half of the season of baseball will be over with. And there'll be plenty of stories to tell, especially around the All-Star game when it's not being played in Atlanta.
Oh, yeah. Don't get me started on that. Don't get me started on that because that's political, and I don't want to get too deep into political waters. I'll dip my toe in occasionally, but I usually just pull it right back out.
I got you.
So, guys, Rob, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. We hope we could be on your show again some point down the road.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody, this has been the Meet with Big Pauly, my very first show on the interviewer end as opposed to the interviewee end. Godspeed and God bless everybody, as I always say. And we'll do it all again soon. Bye-bye for now, everybody.
Thank you, guys.